Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington. And today I'm joined on late on a Monday. We're kind of getting this week underway one way or another. It's Nadia Padzensky with Nadia Joyce Photography out of Portland. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, late on a Monday night, making time for this. So why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Very happy to be here. So yes, I'm Nadia. My business is Nadia Joyce Photography. I am currently based in Portland, Oregon. Although I do a lot of shooting in Portland and actually the Seattle area. So I'm kind of across the Pacific Northwest. Started my business back in 2010, right after getting my bachelor's from the Evergreen State College in photography. And I've kind of been moving around a lot since then, and have pseudo settled in Portland. But like I said, I'm shooting all across the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, because I was like on your Instagram beforehand, kind of looking and like, yeah, I saw like kids at Memorial State Park and things up here. And, you know, there's, I think it's good to, kind of traverse the whole, west side here from Seattle and up and down. The one thing that really struck me about you is, like you said, starting your business many years ago, back in 2010, which is a lifetime, I think, for some, wedding, just like nowadays, in photo and video, and there's a lot of like, hey, so I'm going to do this and I've been doing it 2 months and I'm a, photographer, videographer, whatever. So what is it, talk about some strengths that you have. I mean, just have been doing this so long and just seeing so many different things and so many different trends and you just have a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, it's definitely been a long journey. So yeah, a little bit of context on this too. Yeah, my business did start in 2010. I actually started the business in Olympia, Washington. So my original location was actually Olympia, Seattle area. But shortly after it officially started, I decided to move to Eugene, Oregon, thinking I was going to get my graduate's degree. Eventually decided against that, moved back to Olympia briefly, and then I actually ended up moving to Thailand and living there for about half of a year. And I met my now husband there. And when we came back, we landed in Portland. So started in 2010, really now just like fully establishing. And I think that's one of the big things that I've learned over the past almost decade is that despite the fact that I shoot in several different locations, not just the Pacific Northwest either, I've shot in Texas and the East Coast and things like that. It really is really hard to do if you don't have a home base that you're like secured in. So all that moving around, it was a lot of stop and go. But now I'm happy to be settled. And it's been almost a decade. I think I have seen a huge variety of things in the wedding industry. I think my favorite stuff is always the ceremonies that are a little quirky, non-traditional stuff. I know that's kind of a catchphrase nowadays, but really, I do really love the non-traditional stuff. I think it's really fun. People that do unexpected things. If you ever include a dog, I'm going to be really happy. It's the best. And just being able to go with the flow with those kinds of things. Those are my favorites, but they can be a little unpredictable as compared to some of the more traditional events that you go to. And I love it. And just being able to think on your toes, be able to move around a timeline that isn't necessarily set in stone. And I think some of the best moments actually happen in those situations.
Yeah, it's so hard. I mean, and I talk to people all the time and they say, oh, wasn't that like we had this big Nigerian wedding a couple weeks ago. The ceremony was like 3 hours. I mean, it was literally like nonstop. And so, and my friend was in the audience and he's like, man, like, wasn't that so cool? Like kind of whatever. And I'm like, I think it's cool to experience that, but we're trying to capture all that. It's kind of different when the shoe's on the other foot, and I'm like, I'm just trying to kind of make sense of all this. Yeah, if I was just hanging out and watching it, it's tough. It's that tough balance between, like you said, kind of doing some of the more traditional stuff. Okay, I know this, I've got this, and then like also trying to do other things and kind of round that experience out.
Yeah, 100%. It's nice to have that foundation, so you can feel confident and solid, like the quote unquote rules. So you've got that set, but then that gives you the flexibility to definitely move around and be flexible when it doesn't go according to plan.
Yeah, so you went to Evergreen State College. That was definitely on my kind of tour list as well when I was looking at, I'm from Seattle, and when we were looking at colleges.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going east of the mountains. But what were you originally hoping to study there? And what kind of, like, on your website, you said you've had a camera from such a young age. And was it always just trying to do some artsy stuff? Or what were you kind of trying to find your voice in?
Yeah. Funny story. I grew up in North Idaho, and I've lived with animals my entire life. My mom actually used to be a breeder of border collies, so I've always been around dogs, and I originally thought that I was going to be a veterinarian. I've actually worked in the veterinary field quite a bit. I have about 7 cumulative years doing that off and on as an assistant and technician. And so when the time came to graduate high school and choose a college, I was kind of torn because I had this veterinary thing that I had in my brain most of my childhood. But in the last few years of high school, I really fell in love with photography from more of a kind of serious standpoint. Like you mentioned, I had a camera in my hand from a very young age. My mom was always shooting on film cameras, and I kind of learned some from that and loved it. I was a really annoying friend who always had a camera and was documenting absolutely everything that we did in high school. And it was fun and I loved it, but I never imagined this could be a career. And I think there was a career day in high school. A photographer came, senior portrait photographer, I think, and talked to us about his work and the fact that he was making a living doing it. And I was like, this is a thing? Like, I can make a living out of this? So it wasn't really until the very end of my high school years that I was starting to consider it. And so I applied to a bunch of different schools and I got accepted to WSU, which, for those who don't know, has an amazing veterinary program. And I also got accepted to Evergreen, which has an amazing photography program. So ultimately, I decided that I wanted to go the artistic route. It helped I had some family friends in Olympia, so already had a good foundation there. And yeah, I continued to kind of dabble in the veterinary world, but ultimately my goal from then was to build a business.
So then you go to Evergreen, and I think Evergreen's kind of famous for being a little bit more, I don't know what the word, it's a little more free flow there, right? Yeah, okay. We had a family friend that was a teacher there too, and I'm a little bit more type A, and we walked in there and my mom was like, I don't know if this is right for you. And I was like, but I mean, that obviously helped foster kind of the creative mindset, right?
Yeah. I mean, yes, for sure. And one of the beauties of the Evergreen program that I really appreciated, I'm actually not sure that they do this anymore. I graduated in 2009. So it's been, it's been 10 years since I graduated. But at the time, the way that the photography program worked, you could set it up so that you were studying film photography before you even touched on digital in that learning environment. And so I actually really deep dove into black and white film photography, processing my own film, my own prints and all of that from the very get-go. And then we started to dabble in some digital stuff. I learned color film photography and processing my own stuff there too. And I think so understanding the film side of things from a very deep and intimate level really, really helped me when it came time to, now I shoot only digital, because for me it's the most realistic thing to use for weddings. And it has shaped everything artistically and how I approach documenting the day and then processing the files after the fact. I pay a lot of attention to color because my color film photography days were many hours in the dark room obsessing over, ooh, is that slightly green still? Or I need to add some blue. And that just sticks in your brain. That stays with you. So I pay a lot of attention to color, a lot of attention to exposure. And I try really hard to get those things right in camera, because I know the difficulties of dealing with something in post-processing, especially from a film standpoint. So yeah, it's just kind of stuck with me.
Wow. So only film?
In college, in the very beginning.
Okay.
Yeah. So now I'm shooting digital only,
Yeah.
but that film experience and learning that first at Evergreen made a huge difference in how I then approached digital.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think I don't know, I haven't been to a college photography class in a long time. I don't even know if they teach some of that stuff anymore. I mean, I just think nowadays it's so much like fix it in post, Photoshop it later. And I work with a lot of photographers that do a lot of Photoshop. And like, I'll just fix that later. And I'm like, I can't, I don't have those same tools. And I think, like you said, really focusing on getting it right in camera is obviously going to make it a lot easier kind of on the other side.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, with film, you don't have that freedom. You can't, there's a little bit of wiggle room when you're doing your enlargements and stuff. You can change your exposures a little bit and stuff. But if the information isn't there, it's not there. Digital's a little bit more forgiving in a lot of ways, especially digital nowadays. So yeah, I developed some really good habits from film, and it's made all the difference for sure.
So you're in college, and when you leave, is it full on, we're starting a photography company? Is that how that happened, or what was that transition kind of out of school?
Yeah. So yes and no. I did start the business. So I graduated June of 2009. The business started basically January of 2010. I had to learn some of the ins and outs of Washington State and running a business. I did not take any business courses in college. And if there's one thing that I regret, it's that. Take business classes if you're going to be creative. It's like the most valuable thing you could do. But so there was a little bit of ramp up time. And initially, of course, I did have a kind of day job where I was paying my bills, slowly building up clientele. And then that second year, I think, was the year that I quit the day job, started doing photo full time, and then kind of began the whole process of moving every year or two. So it was a little bit of, like I said, a journey to get to full time again.
Yeah, it's so hard, the moving, and I think we've had I'm sure Rebecca, she's a letterpress worker down there on the podcast, and she had moved, and people think like, oh, you just change your Google listing address and like you're all good, and people don't realize how much SEO and time and just even just networking and meeting people in the area, and even Portland to Vancouver to Seattle is different worlds, it feels like sometimes.
100%. It is completely different markets. Of course, all the people are amazing, but there is a very different kind of clientele, a different kind of atmosphere when it comes to a lot of the weddings that I shoot in the Seattle area versus a lot of the weddings that I get inquiries for and shoot down here in Portland. It's just a different kind of market.
Yeah, because we talk with people a lot, like I said, photographers up here and down there. What do you find is the biggest difference between, clients or the weddings, from down there and up in Seattle? I'm just curious your thoughts.
Yeah, and of course, only my personal experience. So I welcome anybody to disagree with me for sure. But in my experience, Seattle has a little bit more of that kind of urban. I see a lot more traditional leaning kind of weddings up in the Seattle area, typically bigger, so bigger guest count, kind of more extravagant venues. What I've seen down in Portland, we're a smaller city, so a lot of this just makes sense based on size, but I also see a lot more of the non-traditional stuff in Portland, smaller venues, smaller guest lists, all of the elopements. I think I'm thinking off the top of my head right now, but I think every elopement that I've had, or intimate weddings, so anything that's like 25 guests or fewer, have been down here and not necessarily up there. Not that they don't happen up there, it's just not as common, I think, as down here.
Yeah, no, and I think that makes sense. I mean, it does always feel too a little bit like, and it could just be like Seattle upcharges, but it does seem like things cost a little bit more in Seattle than they do down in Portland.
Yeah, that too. I have noticed that as well. I think that, I mean, that can be applied to a lot of things. I think that, yes, a lot of the wedding industry things are more expensive venues and whatnot. But if you look at like Seattle rent rates and housing costs compared to Portland, it all kind of aligns and makes sense. But yeah, I would totally agree with you.
So when you were going about launching your business, was that, you said your mom, you veterinary, I mean, did you have, when you're trying to be an entrepreneur kind of like that, was there some experience with anybody, or was that kind of a new venture for you, and what kind of was the reaction from your family and everybody?
Yeah, definitely a new venture. So I was an only child. My mom was a single mom, and so I didn't have any siblings. But on my dad's side of the family, immediate side of the family, I think I'm one of maybe two of our generation that has graduated school. And I am one of, I think the other, it's a cousin who also went to school, also has her own business. I think I'm the only one that's got my own business as well. And so I didn't really have an example to work from. It was definitely figuring it out as I go, especially because I didn't take those business classes. Trying to kind of take advantage of some of the resources that existed up in that area at the time. There's quite a few small business, like free programs up, at least in the Olympia area. So I tried to take advantage of some of those and understand, like, what are my taxes supposed to look like? All those little, like, boring details that nobody wants to deal with. So yeah, it was a little, put it together as we go in the beginning, for sure.
Yeah, because like you, I was kind of the same thing, where a lot of those, I think looking back, more important, business courses or accounting or kind of anything like that, I was doing the journalism thing, and that, ended up where it did. But what were some of the toughest, lessons that you had starting your business, or things that you are happy that you kind of figured out, or, growing pains that you're happy to, move past?
Oh gosh, there's so many. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things was definitely learning to outsource certain things, or delegate certain things. So instead of trying to do every single piece of my business all by myself, finding other people who are experts at those things, like taxes, and those kinds of things, making sure I'm getting the information for them and then letting them handle it. It can be really tempting, especially early on, to just try and do it all yourself because you want to save money. And for me, I just have always had this mentality of, I can handle it. Like, I can do it all. Some people might call me a workaholic, and it's a really easy trap to fall into. But eventually, you learn that just how incredibly valuable your time is, and that it is actually much more beneficial and much more lucrative to offload those things that you're not an expert at, so you can spend your time on the things where you are an expert. So.
What is it about weddings and like you said, elopements, your intimate weddings? What is it about weddings in general that excites you, that you find, the passion in? I know you talk a lot about storytelling and capturing stories on your website. What do you find, that it kind of excites you every day to work?
Yeah. There's a few things, I think. Actually, when I initially started out and I was in school, I swore I was never going to shoot weddings. Because I had heard from others more experienced than me how stressful they were, how terrible it was to work weddings. And a cousin of mine was getting married and asked me to photograph her wedding while I was still in school. And I was terrified. And I said, okay, but you're not paying me. And they insisted on paying me, and I made like $100. And it was amazing. It was so much fun. And I just remember walking away from that thinking, this was basically somebody put together this beautiful setting and all of these happy people for me, and I got to photograph that instead of me conceptualizing something, getting all the pieces and putting them together myself. It's just there for me. And every single one of them is different, and it's really fun trying to identify, okay, what makes this wedding special and different for these people, and really honing in on that and making it feel like them, so that when they look at those images in a year, 50 years, that they remember, oh yeah, that's what it felt like, and that was totally us. I really like that, the challenge of finding that uniqueness in each one.
Talk about the experience of working with you. Do you really like to get in, and learn, how your couples tick and kind of get into that? I mean, what is it like if I'm someone that's getting married and I choose you, and what does that kind of experience look like?
Yeah, I definitely like kind of digging in and getting to know people for sure. One of the very first steps when somebody's just inquired with me, not when they've booked, is I try really hard to get people on the phone so that we can not only talk through logistics, but talk about like who we are. And I give them a chance to ask me those kinds of questions too. And I want to know, like, what's their favorite thing about their partner? I want to know, tell me a little bit more in depth about your proposal story. Tell me what you're most excited about for the wedding day. These are all questions that I like to ask each couple. And it's always different for everybody. And so from that conversation forward, it's a lot of trying to understand who they are and where they're coming from and what's most important to them. And that carries over into the engagement photo session, where I tell people I'm really excited to go to lots of different locations. If you're into hiking or adventuring somewhere, like, let's do that. And let's hang out, and I happen to have a camera with me. Like, I want you to be comfortable and have fun. And like, the best thing somebody can say to me after an engagement session is like, that was so much fun. That is the best. I want people to have a blast. And same with the wedding day. I want people to feel comfortable. I want them to feel like they're enjoying their day and they're not necessarily just always getting photos taken. I try and give a good mix of those candids and what is actually going on, and how they're really experiencing the day, as well as some of those more like intimate, formal images. So definitely like to get to know them and understand what's important to them and work off of that.
Yeah, it's so hard nowadays, with couples and families. We've kind of had a string, it feels like the last month or so, of a lot of long engagements, lots of planning, lots of pressure, families and all this kind of stuff. And really trying to get them to relax day of and have that time. I mean, it is really challenging, and it's fun, and obviously we want to do it, but I think it's an underrated, skill of just, being able to put people at ease and get them to get the photos that obviously are that you want to get for them and make them happy, but also, you got to manage timelines and expectations and all this. But I mean, it's just a lot goes into it. And I've just been really reflecting on that the last couple of weeks, just like, how can we better serve the clients, just trying to get them at ease and make sure they know that like everything's going to be okay, that we're going to get it. It's just so hard. And a lot of these, younger kids now, and I don't know, it's just something I've really been reflecting on kind of in the last month of this kind of wedding season.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And that's, for me, the thing that I try really to focus on is just I err on the side of over communicating with people, especially leading up to the day. I just want people to always feel like, she's got this. I don't have to worry about it. I always let them know they can reach out to me with questions, not just about photography, but if they've got questions about their timeline, I like to try and help with that. Or if they're looking for recommendations on how to do something, or should we do this before or after the ceremony? we always put together a shot list so that they don't have to think about which combinations of family photos they want on the day of. It's just, I've got it. I've got the list. It's fine. Just, I'll direct you. You're good. So yeah, it's just a lot of erring on the side of over communication, making sure that they don't ever feel like they don't know something they need to know, and making myself really available to people. And I've seen that's been really successful as of late, with a lot of the stuff that, like you just described.
Yeah, what do you think is some of your strongest, attributes as, a photographer, or like you said, kind of somebody day out? I mean, obviously doing this along, a really long time, just kind of in comparison to a lot of the photographers I kind of, interact with on a daily basis. What are the strengths that you think have kind of given you that success for as long as you have?
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of things. One, I mean, the experience definitely makes a difference. There are very few things that fluster me anymore. I won't say I'm invincible. There are definitely things that get my heart rate up. But I've seen a lot of different situations. I've seen a lot of things fall apart. A lot of timelines fall really far behind. And I think that I bring a really calming presence in those kinds of situations to the couple. So, if a bride hears that something didn't show up the way it was supposed to, or they're running 45 minutes behind or something, it's just like, it's okay. We got this. You're still going to be married at the end of the day. Like, that's what we're here for. Focus on that. You still got your favorite person. Like, it's all going to be good. So that's definitely been beneficial. I think the other thing is, previous day jobs, I've actually got a lot of experience in project and program management. So that has definitely been a huge benefit to me. Just a lot of the skills and habits that I learned from managing projects and programs. I worked for GitHub. It's a tech company based out of San Francisco. They host code for web developers, or just developers in general. And so I was project and program manager for that company. And that's some high stakes stuff in certain situations. I learned a lot how to present things to people, both at an executive level as well as, my peers, and understanding how to communicate effectively with different groups of people based on what their goals and their priorities are. So fine-tuning my communication style and what I'm communicating to an individual is something that I've found very, very helpful in this industry.
Yeah, it's tough because, we are kind of the vendor that we are, the personality and stuff. And yeah, I mean, every client is going to be different, every wedding. But then, yeah, like you said, just kind of the personalities of them. And, some people are a lot more high stress about things, or a lot more particular, or a lot more whatever. I mean, just really, like you said, trying to figure out kind of how to communicate most effectively with them is really, it's a really challenging, but, it's kind of like a fun challenge,
Totally. Yeah. And it's really cool when you get to know these people and then you kind of start to click with them. You understand. My favorite thing is learning what people's sense of humor is, and then being able to play to that. And just like, that's how we have fun. Like, okay, you clearly like puns. Let's try and use those while we're out hiking through the woods for your engagement session. Like, I want people to feel really comfortable being who they are, whether that's goofy or serious or whatever makes them feel most at home in their skin while I'm documenting them.
Kind of doing this as long as you have over the years, obviously, photography's trends have kind of come and gone. How do you describe kind of your style? I mean, and what do you think of all these different trends and stuff? Do you just really try to stay true to your voice? How do you kind of look at, the way that you photograph technically?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's ever evolving. I definitely have a foundation of, I want to remain true to color when it comes to your final product. So I don't want your greens to be completely washed out. I'm not going to oversaturate anything either on the other side. So trying to remain true to color. And then also making sure exposure is very good. So no blown out highlights, and with the exception of, some creative flexibility on certain images, also detail in your shadows. So proper exposure, proper color, sometimes leaning more towards a little bit darker or maybe a little warmer for mood or creativity on certain images. So not going full on into trends. I know there's lots of different kinds right now. Like the big two right now are bright and airy and dark and moody. I try really hard to create images where when you're looking at these in 50 years, it's not going to be like, oh, that was clearly shot in 2019. I want it to be something that's timeless and classic, but also elicits emotion. So yeah, I'm going to use a little bit of post-processing to get creative with them. I do really love using prisms and light tricks for certain images, just to kind of add a little bit of drama to certain moments or situations, or some of those like sunset couples photos can be really fun to play with. But I'm always going to make sure that you've got that true documentation of the day and those big moments for sure.
How do you, a lot of different wedding categories nowadays, so saturated and especially, photo, video and stuff. How do you, stand out? How do you kind of let people know about you? Do you, just get your work out there? Are you, is networking with different venues, or how do you really try to make yourself stand out and get the clients you do?
Yeah, I'm still working on this for sure. I won't pretend to be an expert. I've been in Portland for 5 years now, and I feel like I'm just over the last year or two really starting to get my feet under me with this. But some of the biggest things that have been really valuable for me are definitely networking. So meeting other vendors, being really welcoming and open and collaborative with other vendors, other photographers, venues, videographers, just making those friends in the industry, because we're all in this together. We all know what this is like and how important this work is. But then also just learning to be a little more open on social media, a little bit on my website too, of who I am, and letting people understand me as a person and as a professional, so that they can get a good gauge of like, is this a person that I'm going to feel comfortable with documenting this really important day in my life? Like, inevitably, all of your vendors, I think especially your photographers, videographers, caterers, are going to be part of the experience that you have on your wedding day. So it has to be somebody that you feel good about. So trying to let people see some of that even before they talk to me has been really helpful.
So you said you met your, now husband when you guys were living in Thailand. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that like? What was it like living in Thailand, and, how did that go about? And then how was your wedding, and what was that experience like?
Yeah. Oh, it's a good story. I have to say, it's a pretty good story. So we met actually in Eugene when I was still living in Eugene, Oregon, shortly before I was about to move back to Olympia. And also shortly before he was shipping out to Thailand for Peace Corps. Come to find out, we had mutual friends that we both know in our entire lives, and somehow we'd never crossed paths. And those mutual friends had gotten together and were dating and eventually married. So just one random game night, we were hanging out at the same game night party, just by chance. Again, never crossed paths previously somehow. And got to talking, and then just kind of parted ways. And then we met again at a Halloween party a few weeks later, and just kind of started dating from there. The thing was, he was going to leave to Thailand soon, and I was moving back to Olympia. So we weren't being serious. And then, well, things happen and you fall in love. So I had been trying to get out of the country for a little while to travel internationally. I'd never traveled internationally yet, and I didn't have a specific destination that I wanted to go. And I knew he was going to Thailand, and I said, well, Southeast Asia is as great a place to start as any. So I saved up for 10 months and actually decided to move there. Got a job teaching English at an elementary school in the same town where he was based. We got really lucky in a lot of ways. And yeah, spent about 5 months there. it was a really amazing experience, a very amazing personal experience. Thailand is a crazy place. It's beautiful. We were in a tiny little town on the isthmus. So like an 8-hour bus ride or something from Bangkok. And, you know, we rode our bikes everywhere to school and the store. And we lived in this little tiny apartment. And we ate all the most amazing street food, and they all lived in our neighborhood, so they all knew what we ordered, and it was pretty magical. It was challenging too. It's a very challenging experience as well, but it's something I wouldn't trade. It was phenomenal, and it changed a lot of things for me.
Just in terms of, you know, wanting to travel more and experience new things, or what?
I mean, yeah, definitely that. We've done a lot more traveling since then, not as much as I'd like, but a lot more. But it taught me, I think the two biggest things. One, getting out of that comfort zone. I have anxiety. I actually have obsessive compulsive disorder. And these are things that have challenged me throughout my life in regular situations. So being put into an environment where when I first got to Thailand, I actually lived in Bangkok by myself for the first month because I was getting a certification as a English as a second language teacher. So my husband, he was somewhere else 8 hours away. And I landed in Bangkok, and I was in this place where I knew nobody. I had no easy transportation, and I had to get around and I had to eat. And I still always remember this moment. I had an apartment there in Bangkok for 1 month, and the day that my husband left to go back to town, because he met me at the airport, he went to go back to his small town, and it was the first time I was in the apartment alone, and I stood there and I started to panic. And then I just took a deep breath and I said, okay, like, I'm going to figure this out, because honestly, I have to. I do not have a choice. I have to figure this out. I'm going to be okay. And that was kind of the first and last moment where I panicked. It's just, I think that this has also affected how I approach weddings and my flexibility and ability to adapt. Traveling alone, or even traveling with a partner in a place that you do not know, where you do not really speak the language, especially, you just learn how to communicate with people in different ways, and you learn how to take care of yourself. And you also learn how to keep yourself calm in otherwise stressful situations. So, yeah.
What was your wedding like?
Oh, it was great. So like I said, we landed in Portland when we came back from Thailand. And we ended up getting married. I'm a very outdoorsy person. The woods are probably my favorite place. I love trees. Wolves are my favorite animal. But we were kind of working a bit on a budget, but I knew that photography was really important to me, obviously. And that I just wanted some images in the woods at some point. So I contacted a friend that I actually went to school with at Evergreen. And I actually second shoot with her a lot. We work together a lot still. She's up in Seattle. And she shot our wedding for us, and we did a bunch of our images up in Forest Park, which is a huge park here in Portland, with lots of different beautiful areas. And then did the rest of our ceremony, reception, everything at the Village Ballroom, which is this beautiful little vintage looking ballroom above a nonprofit brew house in North Portland. So it was a really intimate, small and pretty humble kind of day, but it was perfectly us. And we did our centerpieces ourselves, and just light on the florals, and we just played some of our favorite music off of a Spotify playlist. And I mean, most of our money was definitely spent on photography. And just a lot of people from around the country came and celebrated with us. And we had 6 or 7 different cheesecakes instead of one cake. And our hashtag was Cheesecake Wedding 2015. Yeah, it was fun. It was just, we wanted people to have fun. We wanted people to eat good food. And we didn't want it to be a big display. We just wanted it to be really us. So that's what we did.
Why all the cheesecake? Just so you guys eat cheesecake?
Oh my
fans,
God.
or-
Okay, so cheesecake is my husband's favorite dessert. And I have a really bad sweet tooth. It's really bad. And so I was going to be happy with whatever dessert we had. Ice cream is my favorite, and cheesecake is kind of like texture-wise a good in-between from cake and ice cream. And of course you get that tangy and sweet. And we had a variety of flavors, which was also excellent.
That's awesome. Yeah, you were starting the whole, because nowadays, like, half the people don't even have cake at their wedding. Like, you guys were doing the whole alternate dessert thing, years ago now.
Yeah, no, we just knew we just wanted something that we were going to be like really excited to eat. And other people were excited to eat it. But, of course, only like you invite people and maybe like 75 to 85% of your invite list shows up to the wedding typically. So a smaller group came and we ended up going home with so much cheesecake. We had so much leftover cheesecake. That may have been the first and only time I've ever been sick of cheesecake.
Yeah, I think I had like one bite of our cake. Dorothy wanted carrot cake because she thinks that that's, healthier to have. And I had like one bite. And then Salty's put it in a box. We got married at Salty's, and they put it in, it was like a box, whatever. And so we had it, they said, "Oh, put it in the freezer and then have it at your 1 year anniversary or whatever." And so then we cracked this. And I think we moved in the meantime. This cake had been with us a long time. And I had thought, oh, this thing's clearly preserved because it's in this box and it's whatever. And it wasn't at all. And they had literally just thrown it in this box with like the flour still on it and like slapped a sticker on it. And so Dorothy still ate it. I didn't even eat it. I was scared to. But I got one bite of, $1,000 or whatever we paid on that cake. I had one bite out of it. Over.
Oh, bummer. Yeah, see, that's exactly what we didn't want to happen. So we made sure, we didn't even have to ask this, but we said, okay, we want to make sure there's at least one slice left from every flavor because we want to try that. And then we had already planned we weren't going to freeze it because we knew, we got our cheesecakes from Petunia's here in Portland, and we love their desserts. So we figured, instead of just freezing this stuff, it's cool. We'll just go back to Petunia's at our 1 year and just get something fresh that we'll enjoy and eat that. And that is ritual enough for us. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
This is good. Before we let you go, what is something you wish more people knew about you? It could be personally, it could be the way you photograph, what you enjoy doing when you're not photographing. What do you wish more people knew about you as a person?
Oh, wow.
And that's tough, I know.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It is. It is tough. I think one of the things that I really want people to know, and that I actually would need to work on doing a better job making clear, is that diversity, inclusion, and belonging is really important to me. And it's something that I've been passionate about my entire life, and every day job that I've ever had, whatever company I worked for, I would work really hard to make sure that I could be involved in whatever programs they had or start programs if there weren't any. And I want to carry this over into my photography. Equal representation, equity, and access to all the same options, whether it's your wedding or just life in general, is something that I am really, really passionate about. And so I'm really excited to see a lot of these more inclusive practices becoming more talked about and more included in the wedding industry in general. And I definitely want to be a part of that and helping make that even better than what it is.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in the Pacific Northwest, I think that we're probably more inclusive here, but not obviously as necessary as everyone needs to be. And so, no, I definitely think, and, I was working in TV when they passed gay marriage and all that, and just really been kind of following that for years. And no, I think it's awesome. You also have here on your questionnaire talking about this years-long women's empowerment project. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah. Thanks for asking about it. Yes. So this is a project that I have been working on since 2016. It's kind of had some stopping and going just because life and wedding season, when wedding season is in full swing, it's just really hard to get any kind of creative work done. But it's called The Powerful Project, and it is a series about and for not just women, but marginalized genders. So I've also got some representation for trans women, non-binary individuals, and others. And it's a combination photographic and written series. And so I meet with individuals and we do a portrait session as well as talk through whatever story they want to tell about themselves. And the only thing that I typically ask is that they share something that shows a time or something they experienced where they felt vulnerable, and in contrast to that, a time or experience where they felt powerful. And this is something that kind of grew out of a very personal place where, as we all have when younger, we all go through a lot of growing pains. Some of us get bullied, some of us get teased, or we have issues with self-confidence, or just those struggles of being young. And there were some things that I had gone through in my younger years where if I had something like this to see, I'm not alone. And also, yes, this hard, difficult, terrible thing has happened or is happening, but it happened to this person too. And look at where they are, and look at how it doesn't define them. It's part of who they are and their life experience, but they're powerful and they're strong, regardless. And trying to highlight those stories and make them more visible. A lot of these people who have participated so far have shared things that they haven't shared with anybody because it didn't feel right at the time. It didn't feel right. But in the prospect of being able to share it in this context of helping other people through things, it suddenly felt right to share it. So yeah, it's definitely a work in progress. There is a website, but it hasn't been updated for a while because life has happened. But I have a huge backlog of portrait sessions and some really amazing people who have taken part in this. So it's definitely, it's not over, and it won't be for a very long time.
And if people want to check that out, where would they go?
So the website URL is wearethepowerfulproject.com. There's also an Instagram account just called Powerful Project. It's at Powerful Project. And I believe I have a link on my NadiaJoycePhotography.com website as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing that. No, I think that's, awesome. And yeah, it's so hard to do these, passion projects and, run a business and find time. And I certainly understand your plight, but I think that it's awesome. And, obviously any chance you get, I think it's great to, work on that and go through that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
This has been so great. Like I said, late on a Monday, taking time, we're still kind of trying to get through wedding season. I think we'll get there eventually.
It'll end eventually.
Yeah, it's on Saturday. We were all kind of just talking about, it's good. We're almost there. If people want to learn more about you and your wedding photography and projects and kind of everything else, where would you have them go check out?
Yeah, so definitely my main website, NadiaJoycePhotography.com. That has a lot of information about me, my business, obviously my portfolio. I'm also try to be fairly active on social media. So on Instagram, I'm Nadia Joyce Photo. On Twitter, I'm Nadia Joyce Photo. And on Facebook, it's Nadia Joyce Photography. And I try and keep those updated and kind of moving with new content.
Perfect. Well, you did great. Like I said, thanks so much for, reaching out and we can get this scheduled and come on. And it's just so great to kind of talk with people, and especially someone like you that's been doing it, a long time and just seeing a lot. And I really want to say thank you and, appreciate you coming on tonight.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Awesome. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. If you're like Nadia and you're interested in coming on the podcast, you can go to www.bestmadevideos.com/podcast guests. That's a nice, easy questionnaire that you can use to fill out to come on, and that we can try to get something scheduled. This has been another episode. Check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. Thanks so much.